Owner? Brennan? Case?
Present.
Cooper? Craigo? Crum? Dockstader? Driscoll? French? Excused? Guru? Hicks? Hutchings? Ide? Jones? Kolb? Landon? Larson? McEwen? Excused. Nethercott? Excused. Olson? Excused. Pappas? Pearson? Rothfuss? I missed it. Salazar? Schuler? Scott? Smith? Steinmetz? Brennan, excuse, Mr. President?
Yes, excuse.
And President Beitman?
Here.
Mr. President, 22 present, 9 excused.
Thank you. Prayer by Pastor Blake Denlinger.
Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You return man to dust, and you say, "Return, O children of man, for 1,000 years in your sight are but as yesterday when it is past, or as a watch in the night." You sweep them away as with a flood. They are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed, and in the evening it withers and fades. O Lord, in this morning of this day, we lift our prayer to you. Living as we do in a land of mountains and grass, we know very well these reminders that you are eternal and we are fragile. We quickly flourish and fade, but you endure forever. And so we call on you, the everlasting God, to bless and help these men and women who are gathered here today to do the important work of government in this generation. Help them to do this difficult work well, to care well for Wyoming while this stewardship is entrusted to them. Bless their work so that even decades from now, even when all of us are gone from this place and others occupy these seats, and these senators are remembered as pictures on the walls of this chamber, still the work done this day will endure and bless the people of Wyoming for generations to come. To do this work well, Father, grant them again wisdom and insight, courage and integrity, endurance and humility, and efficiency to do the work of the day. Bless their labors. And all this I ask in the name of Jesus, who did die that we, though we are like grass, might flourish and live through him. Amen.
Amen. Senator Grew, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, let's see how Chairman Crum did on the journal. Randy, will you read the journal report?
Mr. President, your journal committee reports that the journal of February 4, 2025 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Senator Crum, Chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, the report is adopted. Let's see. Doctor of the day, I don't see a doc. And we're dropping like flies in this chamber, so somebody better call a doc. We need a doc. Today in history. Today is National Girls and Women in Sports Day, so as a proud girl dad of some athletes, congratulations to them, and let's celebrate that. And then today also, American baseball player George Herman Ruth Jr., also known as Babe Ruth, was born in 1895. in Baltimore, Maryland, and Hank Aaron was born in 1934 in Mobile, Alabama. A couple of the greats. Quote for the day: "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." Our good friend Winston Churchill. Dad joke of the day: why did the Scarecrow win an award? Senator Rothfuss, you have any idea? Because he was outstanding in the field. Yes, he was there. Announcement: Senate files are due out of Senate Standing Committee by Friday, February 7th. And again, I've said it all week, but I keep saying it, the committees, you guys are doing such a great job, working an enormous amount of workload, getting everybody's bills out and heard, so thank you for that. Today, second reading of the supplemental budget bill. Drafts for third reading amendments are due to legal upon completion of second reading. So if we mow through these amendments quickly, I think what we'll do is we'll take a 10-minute break so you guys can get your amendments in before the deadline. So we'll see how it goes on the pace of things here. And I was told to remind you, I guess a couple years ago I made this reminder, the 5-minute time limit is not a challenge. So if, want to keep it brief, that'd be great too. Approval of amendments are due at 10 a.m. Thursday. And Friday is the last bills to be reported out of committee in the House of Origin. And the supplemental budget third reading. So those are your announcements. Messages from the House.
From the House of Representatives, February 4, 2025. Message number 181. Mr. President, the House adopted the Committee of the Whole report failing House Bill 186, Bear Coupons, Game and Fish. Ayes 26, noes 32, excused 4. The bill has been indefinitely postponed. Sincerely, Katie Talbot, House Chief Clerk.
That's unbearable. Do we have any standing committee reports? No, not yet. Okay, well, we'll just mow on down to second reading. Oh, yes, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to make a general comment before we start into the supplemental second reading. So, honorable members, the Senate Appropriations Committee did bring you our concept of a supplemental budget. However, today with your amendments, it belongs to all of us now. You know, the tradition in the past over the years has been that the Senate Appropriations vehemently guards and protects what we have recommended. And quite frankly, as long as I am chairman of Appropriation, that is not how we're going to do things. I'm not going to be whipping votes to defend what our concept of the supplemental budget is. I will say this, your Senate Appropriation members have strong views like you on what should be in the supplemental. And we will defend them, and we have some amendments coming forward. But everyone is equal on the floor of the Senate. And so as you bring amendments, and I've gone through, some of them are great. Some of them I'm going to support, some of them I won't. But I want you to know that we as a Senate Appropriations Committee are not going to cram down our views of what the supplemental budget should look like. It's now going to belong to all of us today. And every amendment should be given equal consideration and equal time. And if it works, and if it is the majority of the opinion, then it will be put in our supplemental budget. So I want to make that clear. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senate File 1, second reading of the bill.
Senate File 1, General Government Appropriations, sponsored by the Joint Appropriations Committee.
There is an amendment. Will the reading clerk read in the first amendment?
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 1.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 1 and ask for the body's favorable consideration. Mr. President, what this amendment does is it helps our Search and Rescue Council, which is primarily composed of your local law enforcement, county sheriffs in particular. The challenges that they've been finding, Mr. President, is that they've had fewer and fewer voluntary donations and more demand for their services. As people come and enjoy our state, they have an increased amount of rescue missions that are associated with folks from out of state as a result of our successful tourism efforts. And so what this amendment does is it simply takes $400,000 from the tourism reserve and gives it to Homeland Security, where this Search and Rescue Council is housed. So there's a current grant program where they support the work of your local sheriffs. They have been having some funding challenges given the demand, and I thought that this was a logical connection as we continue to be successful in drawing folks who want to come in and enjoy our state, and on occasion maybe enjoy a little bit too much, maybe get out over their skis and require some of the services of our emergency and law enforcement professionals, that we make sure that those basic functions of government are well funded. Want to make an effort to not increase funding in this budget, Mr. President. So that's why you see this tough decision to redesignate some funds out of the tourism reserve account towards search and rescue. So in the effort of not getting close to that 5-minute limit, Mr. President, I'll leave it at that and stand for questions.
Any discussion on the amendment? Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, I'm in favor of the amendment. I just don't like taking it from the Wyoming Tourism Reserve. We put that money aside for the Wyoming tourism, and now we're tapping it every time we turn around. So maybe we'll have a change to that in the next reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Last speaker hit it right on the head. I truly stand behind funding and doing it. I think we're out of the wrong fund. I'd encourage us to reject this and come back from a different fund on third reading. I'll be fully supportive of any other fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Fully support this bill, and the reason is because this is associated with travel and tourism. Folks come out to our great state to recreate, which helps us all, as shown by the travel and tourism ability to fund this. So it is appropriate to use these funds for this purpose, because folks do get lost out there. And they aren't Wyoming folks we're talking about. We're talking about the people that came in from out of state mostly. I'm not going to say Wyoming folks don't get lost, but typically it's out-of-staters coming in to enjoy our great state, enjoying travel and tourism. So on for the amendment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman of your committee that oversees a lot of the work in this area, I too would ask that you resist this amendment. I fully support where the amendment goes. I just don't support the fund that it's drawing from. So I would ask that you resist this amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else wish to speak on the amendment? Back to the sponsor. Senator Boner.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. Good discussion. Appreciate it. Hope we can work, whether this amendment passes or fails, to better support our law enforcement professionals. Just point out, Mr. President, I appreciate this is a tough choice to take from a successful program and give it to what I argue is very much should be a priority, bread and butter function in government. Just point out that we have to be cognizant of how much we spend around here, especially given the priority for tax breaks and things like that. So I hope that the body keeps that in mind when you vote. I ask for your positive vote.
Thank you, Senator. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 1, roll call. Anderson? No. Barlow, excuse. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Cooper? No. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Case? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? No. French, excuse. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings. Aye. Ide. Aye. Jones? No. Cole? Aye. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? Excused. Nethercott? Excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 1, 15 aye, 12 no, 4 excused.
All right. Amendment number 1, or second, wait a second. Fails, because it's money. Majority of the quorum, so it failed? Okay. Second reading amendment number 1 is failed. Second reading amendment,
What was the vote on that?
15-12-4.
Mr. President,
Senator Scott.
Mr. President, this is an amendment. A simple majority is adequate on an amendment, always has been. On final passage, you have to have a majority of members elected. But an amendment, a simple majority of those present and voting will suffice.
The roll call system says it's failed. She's gonna go ask legal, so we'll stand at ease till the sound of the gavel. Okay, we're back. So the second reading amendment number 1 is passed. We figured out why the system was counting it that way. So we have a quorum right now of 27, so a majority is going to be 14 until some people start showing up. Okay. That being said, I'll announce this again. Second reading amendment number 1, the Senate File 1 has been adopted. Amendment number 2, will the reading clerk please read in this amendment?
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 2, Section 2, Secretary of State, page 4, line 20, after.
Senator Smith.
Mr. Chair, I move Amendment 2 to Senate File 1 and ask that for your favorable consideration. Last year, the Secretary of State Business Division did $30 million in revenue, up from $15 million in 2020. The Business Division of the Secretary of State's office is growing about 14% a year. They asked for 3 positions in the appropriations, which was denied, but this amendment will give them 2 of those positions. This is a mere amendment with the House oh, my bad. Apologize. It's not the online filings, which are in the tens of thousands. That's the reason that they need the employees. It's the higher level filings. There's trademarks, trade names, UCC filings, which is basically like a banker's lane, and businesses can't get loans unless they're done in a timely and proper manner. The Secretary of State does what's like a ag mechanics lien, which is called the effects financing statements. Anyway, they've got fraud claims, and they've only got one person that can do them, that's qualified to do them right now. Bottom line is, there are hundreds of unique and complex filings every month that can be processed, that cannot be processed online or solved by automation, and there's just not enough staff there to get it done. So rather than burning the folks out that are at the higher level, I just would ask that you would consider joining me in this amendment and ask for your favorable vote.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. Little history. Last year, our good secretary came to the Appropriations Committee and asked for a computer system because of the very increase in business that the good senator from here just mentioned. We asked him what process he used to procure this, the standard procedure that we ask every department head, every elected official to go through when procuring virtually anything, whether it's a car or a $3 million computer system. We were told that he was pursuing a sole source contract and that he was negotiating for the contract alone himself. These are both against and patently against the rules that we follow for procurement. We simply ask the good secretary if he would write up an RFP and go through that process and then move forward, and he declined. So we declined the appropriation. This year, the good secretary returned and asked for these 3 positions. And if you go to his budget request in his narrative, he states quite simply that because the JAC turned him down last year for his computer program, he was coming back to ask for 3 full-time positions to process this information. We quizzed the good secretary about that. We asked some pointed questions to make sure that we were understood his request, and actually asked him to come back on a callback, we call it a callback at JAC, to come and give us further explanation on what he had told us before. He declined to come back. For the first time since I've been a member of JAC, an elected or a department head declined a callback. And so faced with no other information, we declined that request. So all we've been asking for is information and process. We have gotten neither. And so I'm against this proposal, and I know it's a cutback to 2, and I appreciate the good bringer, is trying to, weave that story, because we talked about this, and he's tried to weave that into his request, and so he's cut it back to 2, and I appreciate that. But folks, good members of the Senate, this is more than even a simple budget request. Frankly, I think that there's a little more on the line on this one. We go through a process, this budget, and it's difficult, and we spend a lot of time on it. And we need the help and support of our elected officials and
our department heads to put together a budget that we can bring to you with confidence and ask you to support. In this particular case, it's failed. And I ask you to reject the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just piling on a tiny bit on that. Folks, we all rely on our Appropriations Committee to bring us good information for the floor. I urge you to reject this. Without the ability to have a true understanding, there's no way to understand or for us to explain to you why we actually need or don't need it. That not coming back for a callback is unprecedented and unheard of. And there's absolutely no way. We appropriate the money and we're responsible for why and what we do with appropriations. Without information, we need to say no. And I assure you, he'll be back to explain to us better. But we need to really make sure that our agencies and all the people that we're responsible to come give us the information we need to explain to the body. I urge you to vote no on it.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, on and against this amendment, it's not because of anything short of, I hear information given about a computer program that would have sufficed instead of getting extra folks, growing government, frankly, labor-wise. It's, in my mind, it's always going to be cheaper to get a software program, if that's what we need. But putting more folks in there is problematic for me, and I don't want to stand up and grow government. I think there's more conversation that needs to be had according to the testimony or the statements given by my co-senators. So on and against the amendment, Mr. Chair, or President.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just want to thank the previous commenters on this amendment. It's really sad if that's the case. Just wondering, is there a chance for the Secretary of State to come in before next reading to talk to you, or is this just off the table? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Seeing none, back to the bringer. Senator Smith.
Mr. President, this is about revenue generation. It's about Wyoming leading the country in business, which we could, or we could seriously contend for that. I don't dispute anything that was said. In fact, the good senator from Teton County, you weave that. The way that you present stuff. You're a prince of a man in here, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I always tell my kids, you'll never go wrong doing right. They need those positions. They need the software too. And we can go to another level as a state. And I'm going to look past all of that and the disrespect that this chamber has received to do the right thing. They need the employees. It's not about one person. It's about what's happening in that business division. And I ask that you support this amendment.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 2, roll call. Anderson? No. Barlow? Excuse. Boner? No. Brennan? No. Case? Aye. Cooper? No. Crago? No. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? No. French excuse. Guru? No. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen excused. Nethercott excused. Olson? No. Pappas? No. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? No. Salazar? No. Schuler? No. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Dockstetter? Aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 2, 7 aye, 20 no, 4 excused.
The amendment has failed. Second reading amendment number 3. Will the clerk please read it in?
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 3, corrected copy. Section 6, Administration and Information, page 14, line 5, after.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 3 to Senate File 1 and ask for your favorable consideration. Folks, what this position does is A&I had come to us and asked, we have a new building here in Cheyenne that we bought, the DEQ building, that is going to be a quick payback. We actually have been leasing in this building. We're looking at a fairly quick payback on it. But one of the things that we need to do that's been a part of the building, which was included in it when they bought it, was we actually need to, here is the request. A&I is requesting funding the position for custodial supplies, cleaners, paper products, et cetera, equipment, vacuums, carts, and 3 positions, 1 lead custodian and 2 custodians, 3 staff assigned to work in DEQ building full-time. DEQ building is similar in size to Supreme Court, where A&I assigns 3 custodians. Folks, we've cut this back to 2. It's still going to leave us with our building maintained, kept up and done, but it's a necessary part of, if we're going to own our buildings, we have to clean them and maintain them, similar to the Capitol. We trimmed it back 1 position, see how they get by. This will create 2 positions for this, and is ongoing funding. I ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Discussion, Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I just want to piggyback that we own the buildings. They're ours. We can either clean them or let them rot. It's your decision. Thank you, Mr. President.
Discussion. Discussion. Question being called. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 3, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Craigo? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Garou? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen excused. Nethercott excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. Second reading amendment number 3, 21 aye, 6 no, 4 excused.
Second reading amendment number 3 has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 4. Will the clerk please read in the amendment?
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 4, corrected copy. Section 6, Administration and Information, page 14, line 5, after.
Back to you, Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is kind of fall on the last one. I move second reading amendment number 4 corrected to Senate File 1. Folks, this goes into a similar type end of it. I'm going to do what I did last time with you and do this is about trades management, which goes back into the same thing. A&I is requesting 2 trades positions to help our trades management section maintain the DEQ building and other new buildings. The carpentry and HVAC crews have not received new positions in the last 15 years, despite A&I's Cheyenne square footage having increased by 31% over that time, not including the purchase of the DEQ and Riverton buildings. A&I request for this position include the 100 series for the position, some funding to help equip those 2 positions with necessary tools and vehicles. A&I is not currently requesting any full-time positions in Riverton. So this is their overall 15 years, folks. We've done a third up, and they're actually asking for a position, couple positions there. I think this is a good move for the state. We've made a move, and on paper, in a way, it looks like we've spent some more money. In truth, we've been paying for these same services through rent payments and lease payments across the state. State's made the move to take a look and see where we can save money at. I can tell you the building next door has paid for itself many times over. Seems like a big expense, but the truth is, we have one, I'm looking at the good senator from Bates Creek. We've got one in his town we did the same thing with. Those buildings have shown great returns to the state and better service to us. Let's vote yes and encourage us to keep those up and do it right. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just a question that, I'd like to know why the JAC is now, I guess, changed the position and supporting this, and before it came through as a JAC choice not to do this. So I'm a little confused. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Let's go to Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. President, just for clarification, I did catch the explanation of exactly where these two employees are going to be located at. Are they in one of the other office buildings around the state, or are they here in Cheyenne?
Any more questions before we go back to the bringer? Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. President. In answer to my good friend from the southwest corner, the reason why we changed, because originally we did all vote to take these out. That's called a callback, as I was just talking about. We had the folks from A&I come back in. We thought from the narrative, we read it one way, and then when the A&I folks came in on a callback and it fully explained and kind of illustrated their ask, then with that clarity, we changed positions. That's why those callbacks are so critically important. To my friend from Baggs, I believe, and now I look back to the back, I believe they may have, was that Riverton? No, that was from here. I guess there were a couple of different positions in a couple of different buildings, but I believe that these were here in Cheyenne. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll, for your second time.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, thank you. Yes, these positions will go where they. Oh. I'll receive my time.
Senator Pearson, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to make it clear that on a lot of these votes that I'm going to be voting on, there are a lot of these things in the supplemental budget that I don't think are emergency necessary things. And therefore, I just want the people to know why I'm voting no on these, that probably for sure they're necessary, but are they necessary right now in the supplemental budget? I think that it should go next year when we have a budget year. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, now back to you. Oh, Senator Hicks, for your second time.
For my second time, Mr. President. So again, the question was, and I think I heard it, is there just general two positions for where, and what I thought I heard was someplace around here. So I just need a little clarity to understand if we're going to authorize two more employees, that'd be nice to know where they're working at around the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. Senator Grew, for your second time. Oops.
Thank you, Mr. President. They're housed here, but they travel around to wherever they're needed by A&I. And so I knew there were some positions that were housed with the cleaning positions that we were talking about in the last amendment were housed some here and some at the other office building on the other side of the state. But these are housed here, but travel around the state where they're needed, when they're needed. In response to the other question or the comment about it, about supplemental budgets, emergency, that is a guiding principle we use. And I have to say that the reason why there are so few amendments, for those of you who've been around for a while, in this supplemental budget, I really have to say and commend the executive on the first floor, really did take that to heart this year. They really told the departments, hey, make sure it's something you gotta have it now, or it is an emergency. And you'll hear that today. Some of these things have come up or just been identified recently. You're going to hear some things about reports that came out after the budget last year that is new information. So while not an emergency, it's just based on new information that we didn't have last year. And so we'll try to identify those that comes up, because it's a very good point. And I think it's a point well taken. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Driscoll, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I think it's been answered pretty good. You know, I think to add on to it, these two new positions, you do got to keep in mind that since last budget, we have closed on two new buildings, and it kind of tipped them over the top. These positions that we're talking here likely will be in Cheyenne, but they could be somewhere else. We have office buildings, I believe, probably in 15 towns in the state of Wyoming. It's kind of interesting. We think about the one downtown here, but we've got a whole bunch of them scattered out all over the state, some in the middle, some up in the edges near me. These guys, what they do are not the janitors. They come in, replace the HVAC, and do some of the work that actually saves the state a lot of money. They're actually very necessary. And I was kind of shocked when I looked at it that they haven't had any positions in 15 years, because that's about the amount of time I've been in the legislature. We have significantly changed our footprint from state ownership in our office buildings and office space in those 15 years. And for them to do that, it's probably time for us to step up, and it's a timely time to do it. I think this is a good one, and I do think it's probably pretty close to an emergency type deal when you add two new buildings of this significance. Neither one of them are small. Thank you.
Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 4, Senate roll call. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? No. No. Brennan? Aye. Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Aye. Crago? Aye. Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstader? Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott? Excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Scott? No. Thank you. Scott, aye. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 4, 20 aye, 8 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 4 has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 5. Senator Crum.
Privilege of the floor.
Floor is yours, sir.
Mr. President, I'd like to introduce two great Wyoming natives from the Gem City. Fabulous people, been here a long time. One is known as the Big Dipper, John Shirley and his wife Heidi. And we talk about ice cream in the center part of the state in a little teeny town. I can guarantee you, go downtown, the Gem City, and you'll get better ice cream. So I'd like to welcome John and Heidi.
Here, here. Welcome to the Did they bring any samples, Senator Crum? We could use one right now. Yeah, we'll be the judge of that. Okay, second reading amendment number 5.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 5. Section 24, State Parks and Cultural Resources, page 22, line 10 after.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 5 to Senate File 1 and ask for your consideration. Members of the body, you have handouts on your desk. I would ask you to look at this because this is what we're talking about here. And you have the whole historical component associated with that here. But Mr. President, I'll run you through this. This is a picture of a tree with an inscription that was made 134 years ago. It's the only one that's ever been found associated with. In 1891, Congress passed the Forest Reserve Act, and the purpose of that was to extend the forest boundaries around Yellowstone National Park. Immediately, President Harris established this buffer around the park as the Forest Reserve. In 1883, they contracted with I believe it was J.M. Gallagher, who was a surveyor in Montana at the time, to go out there and survey this new boundary. 1893. This tree is located, so those that you are a little bit geographically oriented, in the most remote area in the lower 48 of the United States. There's a thing called Thoroughfare Peak, and off of Thoroughfare Peak, the headwaters of the Thoroughfare River start on one side, the North Fork and the South Fork of the Yellowstone, and then one of the tributaries to the South Fork of the Shoshone, named Yonts Creek. This tree is located in a meadow at Yonts Creek, right underneath Thoroughfare Peak. It's approximately 28 miles on horseback today to get to this point. So the interesting component, this is the only tree that's ever been found that was inscribed by this survey party. So that date on that tree, you can look at the bottom, is October 5th, 1883. And so the reason that this tree is inscribed, if you read the diaries from the time, it snowed for 5 days straight and they were unable to conduct surveys because of the snow. In the diary, it said it snowed almost 5 feet. They were stuck in camp and could not get out. This was a big tree right next to that meadow, and they used their survey tools. And if you look at this, they would inscribe trees for survey markers that they could pull off of at the time. But they inscribed in that tree the names of all those members of that survey party and the date October 5th, 1883. You can see the condition of the tree. It's beetle killed. It's declining significantly in condition. What this appropriation would do would allow us to go in there and retrieve this, so cut the tree down, pull this out. It's about $16,000 estimated bid for a helicopter, has to be slinged to get it out of there. This is in a wilderness area. We've been in contact with the Forest Service. They think they can allow us to go ahead and do this and retrieve it. And then it takes about another $15,000 to $20,000 to bring that back down to the State Museum, curate that tree, develop a display around it. It's part of the cultural history of the United States of America and part of the history of this state. You will not find another tree in the state with an inscription from 1893 that still is standing today, folks. It's 132 years old. It's beetle killed. We need to retrieve it now. It's a lasting legacy of the cultural history of the state of Wyoming, the Forest Reserve Act, and I would ask for your favorable consideration. Oh, I should say also, one of the local outfitters has agreed to donate his time, his stock to transport the saw crew in there, the people that will sling this, the archaeologists that help the sawyers to cut this thing down and on-site do that. It's 2 days to get in there on horseback, 2 days to get out. He's volunteered all of the time, his camp, and all the supplies to support those people to retrieve this tree. Would most likely happen this year. It's a very narrow window of time you can get in there. If the river's too high, usually it's mid-July, and you're usually out of there by the 1st of October. So there's a narrow window. We're trying to get it out sometime in August. But I would ask for your favorable consideration. That's what this appropriation would do and would stand for any questions, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Discussion on the amendment, Senator Drew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think all of you know, as a member of JC, I'm supposed to fight all these. And the fact that tourism funds are being used, I protect that account like a bear protecting its cubs. And I'd love to try to say something like maybe we could use the rescue helicopter that we just voted some money for using that to take it, or actually, we even called to our folks in the military who serve here if maybe they couldn't work up a mission to try to handle this. But the bottom line is, I'm on and for this. This is our history. This is kind of who we are. Like I say, I think, and I know, because the good bringer of this amendment, and I've talked about it, we're going to continue to work on trying to find ways to get this done for free. But this one, voted up, voted down, but I might be just voting yes myself. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, on and for the amendment, but I've got a discrepancy here. The amendment says 1883, and I think on the handout it says 1893. So I don't know which one's correct.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? Senator Dockstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President. Not necessarily opposed, good piece of history. We had something similar in the far west where we found a tree. It was in a forest that went across the state line to the west. We got permission from the forest officials to remove it. We used Boy Scouts and did it for free and came back and preserved it. And they didn't spend any money on it, but not against it because it's a piece of our history. Our tree that we removed almost the same time period from a famous trail that cuts off of through the center of the state and moves over through my country. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we got a bunch of them. Let's go to Senator Driscoll and we'll work our way forward.
Mr. President, I'll be quick. Once again, we're hired to fight these. I'm for it. This is a good amendment. I think we can go forward and look at it. One correction is for my good friend from up in the Yellowstone Park country. He did move this out of general fund money. This isn't tourism money. So I applaud him for doing that. I am the same. I kind of fight for those funds to actually go back to tourism, but this is critical. It's a bug tree, and I think it's time. We need to get it out. This is our history. This is a good spend of state money. Makes sense.
All right, Senator I, do you want to bark up this tree?
I really don't need to stand up. Everybody knows what I think. I commend the bringer of this. This is really neat, but just to keep it short, it should be done privately 100%. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to know if this is old growth, and will this help our water situation in the forest? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Well, back to you, Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I'm just going to buzz right through this. That's a typo that my colleague from Natrona County, it is an 1893 survey. That's a typo in the amendment. It's a technical correction. We can get that done. I don't think that changes the intent. It is a very significant cultural artifact. And back to the private sector, there has been some conversations with the Guard to see if they could use this as a training exercise. It's just about a time window. If that happens, it's great. This appropriation reverts back to the general fund. We're doing everything we can. But at the end of the day, this possession will be the property of the state of Wyoming. It'll be curated, a display will be built, and it'll be for the public in the state of Wyoming. And I do think this is probably, even though my friend thinks it's private, we're trying to do the best. We do have private donations from the outfitter up there, which is a significant contribution. You know, on a similar trip that he was charging for the number of people it was taking, you know, it's in the ballpark of $7,000 to $10,000 contribution from the private sector at no charge to the state of Wyoming. So we can clean that technical correction up on and for the amendment, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 5, Senate roll call vote. Anderson? Aye. Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excuse. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Cole? Aye. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott, excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote? Closing vote closed. Second reading amendment number 5, 22 aye, 6 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 5 has passed, has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 6.
Senate File Number 1, Second Reading Amendment Number 6, Section 24, State Parks and Cultural Resources, page 22, line 10, after.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 6 to Senate File 1. To be really clear, folks, this is not an Appropriations Committee amendment. This is mine. This is to appropriate $10,000 for an exhibit commemorating the life of Stan Hathaway. And for those of you, I'm guessing in this body, a good part of them know it, Stan Hathaway was the 27th governor of Wyoming in 1966, served 2 terms. We've got a building just down the street. I can use the proper name because it's actually what it is. It's the Hathaway Building. And you know, it's absolutely incredible how fast things can change. We have very few buildings in this town that are named after our governors. They're that young. There's one across the street right here, but it tells you what degree of respect these folks earned through their peers and their bodies when they did things. And we're in the middle of a renovation. Right now, they're in the first stages of a complete renovation of the Hathaway Building. And floor 1, they're kind of getting through it. So what this is a display to honor one of our actually most famous governors. Maybe your kids went to school on one of his scholarships that are named after him. He truly had a huge impact on this building in the state of Wyoming. I think it's appropriate that we honor a war hero and a governor that was one of our best ones by investing a pretty small amount of money to make sure that everyone that walks in that building understands who he was. As generations go on, it becomes more and more important to understand those in this body and around the state that have had a true impact. I'd ask for your favorable consideration for not a lot of money for something that's important.
Thank you, Senator Driscoll. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, why is this not something that ought to be in the general budget, biennial budget? This kind of display can be put together. I know we've got a nice one in the building up at Casper College on honoring Governor Hathaway. You can do these things as you need to. Why does it belong in this budget as opposed to the general budget?
Further discussion? Seeing none, back to the sponsor for his second time.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President, that's a great question, and I think it's a fairly inconsequential amount, and they're in the middle of this renovation. I think it's time we could do it. If you turn it down, it'll be back next year. That's fine, either way. But I think it's important to take a look at it. It was a promise I made to a constituent that I'd bring it. If nothing else, you're aware from it. But I think it makes sense to go ahead and pass it this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will please call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 6, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow, excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstader? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Garou? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? No. No. McEwen?
No.
No. Nethercott, excused. Olson? Aye. Aye. Pappas? Aye. Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Aye. Salazar? Aye. Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote? Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 6, 16 aye, 12 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 6 has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 7.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 7, Section 37, State Engineer, page 4, line 20 after.
Senator Jones.
Mr. President, I move second reading amendment number 7 to Senate File 1. I think these are the jobs that we talked about the other day when we were wondering about eliminating them and where they came from. So I'm here to fill you in on this and request that we add these 3 positions back in. We've talked a lot today about why things are an emergency and why it's in this budget. So if you'll listen up, I'm going to explain that to you. These jobs are for 3 full-time positions, and they will work in the Division 4 field office. And this office does work with Wyoming's interstate water compacts. Wyoming is a party to 7 interstate compacts and 3 court decrees. And this is a complex situation, and we definitely need experts working on our behalf. Some of the areas that they're working in are, it's the Colorado River Basin, the Bear River Basin, Snake River Basin, and on the North Platte. I know there's a few people I think are going to speak to this, so I'll just go on about a little bit about the Colorado River operations. This, the water that is available over here is very, very important to some of our industries over there. And the trona industry is one of the number 1 ones. There are ongoing multi-state negotiations for the Colorado River operations, and in order for us to support and be part of these negotiations, we need people who are experts. We're looking at a curtailment possibility for the Colorado River, and that water is extremely important to the trona industry. We are down right now some employees in this area, and we've kind of felt like we've missed out on a few opportunities and a few points that we should have kept apprised of. And it's leading to slow and inefficient actions, and we definitely can't lay down on this job. Water is so important to this state, and we need to make sure that we have the right people in place that are fighting for us. If we do have a Colorado River curtailment, I'm sorry, that was hard for me to say, we will not be able to run our trona operations in my corner of the state. And it could cause these trona industries to buy up ranches to use their water rights, and then we're left with ranches that have no water rights. So this is a trickle-down effect, and so I think the important thing to remember is that these are 3 jobs that are super important to the whole state of Wyoming.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, on and for this amendment. These positions, right now, as the good senator said from Rock Springs, there's a lot of ongoing multi-state negotiations with Colorado River operations, and it's really already impacted the demands on our Division 4 employees. And whenever we have to slow down actions on these activities, then it does have a negative impact on industry and also our municipalities in Southwest Wyoming. We have so much going on right now with, new jobs and industry challenges. If there, as the good senator mentioned, if there's a curtailment in the Colorado River, we're in trouble over there. Our mines particularly do a really good job of working with all the stakeholders and with the backup water that's critical for viability, but Right now, I talked to one particular mining operation over there that they've been waiting 1.5 years for an analysis and a review and an approval of one of their projects, and that's just too long. So we really want to, do what we can right now to continue with all the operations that are going on in Southwest Wyoming, as well as all the new ones that are coming in, and we need this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Larson.
Mr. President, thank you. I'm against this amendment. I think our Joint Appropriations Committee did the right thing. We're trying to save some money, not add employees. Just to go over some basics, there's 4 divisions in the state. This is Division 4 is where these employees would go. I was a hydrographer. When I was there, you're very, very busy during the times that you might have a call on cricks or whatever, or head gates. But other times they're maybe not so busy. I think they have the records. Every year they go out and keep track of ditches, the head gates, what's taken on diversions and stuff. There's records going way, way, way back. You just have to go to the archives and find them. Just to kind of give you an idea how many employees are in each division. There's 4 of them. There's 3 in kind of leadership with the secretary helping in that 3. There's the hydrographers, and then there's interstate compacts. Division 1 would be this southeast area. There's 9 hydrographers. In Division 2 up in the northeast, there's 5. In Division 3, there's 7. And then in Division 4, there's 10. So they actually have the most commissioners, and they don't have the most diversions. So I don't think this is an emergency. They keep saying that we're gonna be in curtailment. The rules for curtailment are that has to be 75 million acre feet over any 10 consecutive years flow past Lee's Ferry. And over the past 10 years, 4 of the last 10 years have been below 11. So that's above 7.5. The lowest is 8, which is almost 7.5 million acre feet that would need to go past there. So I don't think we're in dire need and worry. So I'd vote, urge a no on this.
Other discussion? Senator Hicks.
Mr. Vice President, so I'm going to be on and against this amendment. It's not for the positions, it's the source of the funding. And so this funding comes out of Water Development Account 1. And keep in mind, those water development accounts were set up to be able to utilize for your cities, your towns, your irrigation districts. So currently, this is another drain that takes money away from those local entities. I think the intent's good, and I just come back to the fact that this goes to the Board of Control. And so in the Constitution of the state of Wyoming under Article 8, it established the Board of Control. So we've had a state entity, a state agency called the Board of Control for the Administration of Water since 1890. And for almost our entire statehood, that was funded out of the general fund. And so I don't know what the discussion was, but quite frankly, to take this money away from Water Development 1, from your irrigation districts and your cities and towns, and use it to, and it biennializes in the budget. It's not that I don't think that positions might not be needed. I'm opposed to raiding water development and taking the money out of that program and funding it for these positions. And basically it biennializes, so it doubles next year out of that water development account. So I think this would be okay to come back with a 3rd reading, change that back to general fund. That's where the Board of Control should be funded out of. And this would be a first good step in the right direction to do that. So on and against this amendment.
Further discussion, Senator Kolb.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Just a question to the JAC. Does anyone know if this was attempted to be put into the budget during a budget session or not? Just kind of a history on how this request came about from the past. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Dockstetter.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we sort out the history of it and where the funds need to come through, I just remind the folks that we're talking about the patch here. I spent a lot of time down there in the last few years because there are a lot of jobs and a lot of income and a lot of families affected by this. If we're slowing down the system because they can't get these permits through, then that's our job to open it back up and to make sure that a viable part of our Wyoming industry is taken care of. We've spent time bringing the university out there to say, look what we have here. We've spent time heading back to DC and say, look, if you close this down, this is what it does to all these jobs, the incomes, these families. This is wisdom to help a viable part. We've talked about things that are a little on the lighter side earlier this morning, but now we're talking about something that emphasizes the jobs and the economy of Wyoming. I urge your support.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go to Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. So to answer the good senator's question, the answer is no up front.
Thank you. Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against, but I want to make it really clear. Your JAC is fully aware about the importance of this department, what it does, the Colorado River Compact and what it does, and the economics in Southwest Wyoming and what it does. What we're talking about here is what the good senator from the Bighorn the Bighorn area talked about is resource allocation of manpower, and what the man from Baggs was talking about, Senator from Baggs was talking about resource allocation. And we're trying to get that straight to make sure that we got the right people in the right place, doing the right job at the right time. It is not our intent, nor do we feel that without just a little bit of changing in resource allocation, manpower, that we can't clear this problem up without adding new positions, which has been an overriding goal of the Senate and the JAC. So we're attempting to get to those answers. So between a third reading amendment about where the money is coming from and maybe try to work on a little more answers on the resource allocation part, we're going to get there. But right now, I'm still on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Back to you, Senator Jones.
Mr. President, I think we've talked a little bit about whether these employees are needed, and I would like you to know that not only are these employees needed, but we're going to need some more in the future. We're looking at negotiations on the Colorado River operations, and they are looking at a voluntary water conservation program in the upper basin states. And if that comes to fruition, we're going to need extensive work to establish a program in the upper basin and in Wyoming. And this work is going to create even more pressure on this division. So we need to keep up with the times. We need to make sure that we are experts in this water curtailment issue are working on our behalf. I don't think there's any water experts in this room, but there are some that are asking for these positions. So please think about that. Vote aye on this amendment.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 7, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? No. Brennan? No. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? No. French excused. Guru? No. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? No. Larson? No. McEwen? No. Nethercott excused. Olson? No. Pappas? No. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? No. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? No. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
No.
No. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 7, 8 aye, 20 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 7 has failed. Second reading amendment number 8.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 8, Section 39, Wildlife Natural Resource Trust, and Section 346, page 26, line 11, after.
Senator Larson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 8 to Senate File number 1 and ask for your favorable consideration of this. This amendment will take $40 million and move it into the Wyoming Wildlife and Natural Resource Trust income account, and they will deal with the dollars. It's $40 million grant. This kind of helps the situation with what the executive downstairs is looking for. Might not go all the way that he wanted, but I think it's a good compromise. These grants will be used specifically through conservation districts, weed and pest districts, and the Game and Fish Commission for purposes of restoring grass, hay, and other vegetation destroyed by wildfires. So I'll stand for questions, but I urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. President, thank you. I've just got one question that possibly could be followed. It says on line 10, says is continuously appropriated to Wyoming. Later on in the amendment, it makes it clear that it's not ongoing, but continuously to me kind of sounds like continuously going. So just a little explanation why that's in there, and maybe if we ought to strike it on the next reading.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion? All right, back to the sponsor, Senator Larson.
Mr. Chairman, I'll look into that word and see what I didn't catch it, so I'll kind of look it over and see what the LSO says. Obviously, we want this to not go on for very long, and it will not be in the Wildlife Natural Resource Trust succeeding biennium, fiscal biennium.
Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, I think I can answer that question. So when we use the terminology continuously appropriated, so that money stays in that account until it's expended. Because sometimes it takes, you may appropriate maybe 5 million this year, 8 million next year, 13 after that. So that just stays in there for that purpose. So that funds is continually appropriated, doesn't biennialize, but we may still be paying for some of these noxious weed control 3-4 years out. That money's there to do that specific purpose. So that's why we use that terminology, Mr. President.
Thanks for the clarification, Senator. Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. This second time burns me out. Great explanation. Thank you very much. I want to clarify, I'm strongly in favor of this amendment. I wasn't standing up to try to beat it up. I just wanted a question asked, so it's a great amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Let's do Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the past, we were talking about monies that were needed to replenish the fire fund, to do noxious weed control. I guess, why is this money needed over and above the already prior conversations we've had about the appropriations that seem to be related to the same thing? So could it please explain why this is necessary and how it came about? Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah, and Senator Cole, the sponsor has already burned us 2 times. We thought we were done, and then Senator Hicks offered his clarification. I let him speak because I figured that's what he was going to speak on. So I don't really want to pile on the bill sponsor when he can't talk. So,
Mr. President, I withdraw my question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, good work. Let's have the chief clerk call the roll on second reading amendment number 8 to Senate File 1.
Second reading amendment number 8, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? No. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excuse, Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? Aye. Ide? Aye. Jones? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? Aye. Nethercott excused, Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? No. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote? Closing, aye? Aye to no. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 8. 24 aye, 4 no, 3 excused.
Thank you. Second reading amendment number 8 has been adopted. Senate file, or second reading amendment number 9.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 9, Section 48, Department of Health, page 29, line 8, after.
Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is in Department 48, the Department of Health. And if you'll look down on line 9, it says 19 of this general fund appropriation, $1,195,135, and is appropriated. And what this is for, this is a matching fund account, so it's matched 50-50. So with our 1.195, we'll get 1.195 in federal funding. And what it's for is for Medicaid provider rate increases in the maternal care rates. Over the past decade, access to maternity care has decreased in Wyoming. Since Medicaid pays for 1/3 of the births in Wyoming, increasing the rates we pay providers for parental delivery and postpartum care, is the most straightforward way to help stabilize access to this care in the state. A portion of this funding will ensure that all physician services are paid at least 90% of the Medicare rates in order to maintain broader physician participation in this program. While the number of providers delivering babies has remained steady relative to the number of mothers, hospital and labor delivery units have shut down in Riverton in 2016, Kemmer in 2022, Rollins in 2022, and delivery volumes in Lander has markedly decreased since 2023. This problem is rooted in not in just hospital viability, but OBGYN and family medicine provider density affects hospitals' ability to maintain these capabilities. This request, Mr. President, is very, very important. Right now, like I say, we're having virtually a crisis in our OBGYN community. In an attempt to try to get that stem, the flood of folks going out of this business, we need this. In a rebasing study that came out, they said these were the rates that came. It's come since the supplemental, or since the budget's come out. So that's why the need is acute. The need is now. The information that we got is now. And I'm honored for this and urge you to support this request. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Discussion on the amendment. Senator Crum.
Mr. President, I am strongly in favor of this amendment as well. In our part of the world, this is a crisis situation and just getting worse, and we need to stem the tide now instead of letting the problem get worse, which will cause us more money down the road. So I'm strongly in favor of this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Crum. Anybody else? Senator Scott.
Mr. President, speaking on and for this amendment, Mr. President, we're having a major problem in the availability of obstetric services in this state. There are 3 reasons for that problem. The most important one, Mr. President, is with the declining birth rates and the aging of our population, the volume of cases that are being done in many out of the hospitals is such that it's really cutting in the doctor's ability to earn a living, and so they're going elsewhere. We're having recruiting difficulties, Mr. President. This amendment addresses part of that by increasing the reimbursement from our Medicaid program. Mr. President, the two other reasons are our chronic inability to deal with the malpractice problems and the legal system there. And that's raised the malpractice insurance rates and drives physicians elsewhere. And the third and least important, but still significant, is that the way we've handled some of the anti-abortion things with restricting the drugs has caused some of the doctors to be afraid that for things in their normal practice, they could be in trouble. And that's made recruiting more difficult too. But this amendment, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, deals with the most important cause of the problem, and I would urge its adoption.
Thank you. Senator Scott, Senator Ide.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think this is a good amendment. However, Department of Health is a big elephant in the room for sure. I could possibly support this if those dollars were shifted from somewhere else in the Department of Health, but I don't see that, so otherwise I'm against this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Landon.
Mr. President, just real quickly, could not support this amendment more. I come from the center part of the state, which is the healthcare community. It's the hub. Unfortunately, we've got young families and moms coming into our community from a long ways away, from the Bighorn Basin and from Fremont County, down in the Carbon County area. While we welcome those folks, this is something we need to pay attention to. This is kind of an emergency. This maternal care piece is gonna land in our Labor and Health Committee ongoing. The ability to attract doctors to our state. This isn't much, but it's a very, very important amendment, and I hope you'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Brennan.
Thanks, Mr. President. I too am on for this amendment. I've got a little bit of experience in the maternity world, both as a nurse and as a patient. And this is an issue. And if we're closing places down, and it's a multi-tiered issue that I won't go into right now, but I do think that this is definitely a step in the right direction because we can't afford to lose more OB in the state. I can't imagine being pregnant and being told, well, your closest OB is like 2 hours away for you to deliver. That might mean some women are delivering in the car. I don't know. So we need to do what we can to keep our OB services in the state and even buff them up if we can. So on and for this amendment.
Thank you, Senator Brennan. Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to piggyback on the comments previously, one of our hospitals, actually one hospital in my county and one close to us in Cameron, both have shut down their maternity care. We're in a bad way. This is just a small step that will help. Maybe it'll prevent some other hospitals from closing down their maternity care wards, and I'm just hoping that all of you will vote for it.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, on and for this amendment, this is a critical issue for our area. We, as you've heard before, are having more and more OB come to our city because we have those services and we want to continue to have them for the state. So on and for this amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Dockstader.
I'll let him go.
Oh, Senator Hicks.
Mr. President, not speaking on and for the amendment, but just a little bit of information for those that work in this field and understand. And so what's the reasonable expectation? Because my colleague from Natrona County is right. Most of our folks go to Natrona County. We don't have that service anymore at our local hospital. This is not going to increase that service at that hospital. It's probably not going to make a difference. I don't believe. Maybe it will. I still don't think there's probably going to be enough practice at a lot of these hospitals. So I'm trying to understand if we do. I just want to know if we do this, what's the expectation of this body and what's the outcome? And so are we going to alleviate get another OBGYN and some of our regional hospitals, because this is a problem all over the state, particularly in rural areas. I would like to know exactly what the remedy to the solution is with this. Is it designed to help my little hospital in Carbon County, or is it designed to alleviate that pressure for others? And just for you folks that were on the health committee, I'm sure you've had those discussions, but it would just, so when I go home, I can explain it to my people that this probably is not gonna bring an OBGYN to that. Maybe it will, I don't know. That's the question I'm trying to understand.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Scott, you want to go for your second time?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. President, that deserves a response. It's a fair question. What you're doing here is increasing the reimbursement for Medicaid, which and Medicaid has declined. It used to be almost half of our deliveries. It's now down to about a third, but still we're a major player in that. This, I don't know whether this runs us up against the federal limit, but the federal government does limit how much we can reimburse here, and it may well. It will help. It will help us retain in a hospital, Mr. President, like the one in Casper, the OB population we have got, which is declined and is in critical short condition. But it will not entirely solve the thing. This is the worst of the problems that are causing the doctors to leave or to be difficult to recruit replacement doctors, is then you get the natural turnover. So this is probably the maximum help we can give in the Medicaid area. There may be other steps we will need to take, financial ones, and frankly, we need to do something about the malpractice problems. That drives out OBs too. So this is an effort to retain what we've got now, maybe make it possible to recruit another doctor. It's a step we need to take now, but it probably will not be sufficient. And we're going to have to do some other things long-term. Unfortunately, the last time we tried the tort reform, the issue was not as clearly presented as it might have been, and people voted for legal services instead of medical services. And we're seeing part of the problem. That's part of the problem here too. So we got more problems than this will solve, but this is an essential step in working on the problem overall, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The question I have is this going to obligate us in the future to continue this level of funding? And then from the good senator from the area where the Sweetwater is down south, Rock Springs Hospital is open for business for OGBYN. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Landon, for your second time.
Mr. President, thank you, and I won't belabor for long. The senator from the other side of the mountain outlined a lot of the things that we're concerned with in my community. Frankly, it may obligate us in the future. I'm sure that our Labor and Health Committee will be looking at that. Frankly, our Medicaid reimbursement has not been very good in Wyoming. And so, yes, I think this will at least be the beginning of that conversation of maybe getting a doctor back in Carbon County, for example, or maybe another one over in Sweetwater County. This will allow for a little bit of a stopgap, Mr. President, to get some reimbursement out there to the providers. One little small correction I might make is I think that the good senator underestimated how many of these little ones are being born under Medicaid coverage, and it's much, much higher than a third. We need to take care of our providers, or we're just not going to have them. This is a start. I think we'll be revisiting this as we go along. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Landon. All right, anybody before the sponsor for their second time? Senator Dockstader.
Thank you. My county got 2 hospitals. One thrives in the north. They do a lot without a lot of help. They asked the state once for some help with some brick and mortar, but those funds got diverted to the center of the state. And my hospital still built the services they needed to without the state's help. A little bit of help, but not much. They've got it figured out, but I worry greatly about the hospital in the southern end of my county. It struggles, and they had to give up these services. And if you have these services, what I've found is that tends to anchor the community. It makes it more viable, a more self-reliant, a more sustaining community. And so that's why I would stand behind this, because if you have these types of services in a community, that's kind of holistic in healthcare. So I'm on and for the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Anybody else wish to speak before the sponsor? Back to you, Senator Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to make sure we try to get some of these questions answered. Right now, and this, like I said in my opening remarks, this is a new information we've gotten, which is why the request is here now. Today, we're paying about less than 90% of the Medicaid rate for these services. What this will do, it'll take us to 95 to 105% of what Medicare pays. So it raises it up. Will it bring back an OBGYN to Carbon County? I don't know. But what it will do is it'll get the rates up to try to stop the exodus or slow it down. And in answer to another question that was asked, yes, it is ongoing. This is an ongoing expense until we get to some of the other root causes that we can talk about offline about why this is happening. Right now, this is slated to be an ongoing request for these matching funds. So I hope that answers those questions. On and for. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Roll call on second reading amendment number 9.
Second reading amendment number 9, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Guru? Aye. Hicks? Aye. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 9. 23 aye, 5 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 9 has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 10.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 10, Section 48, Department of Health, page 29, line 8 after.
Senator Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, in Department of Health, Department 48, this is similar. This is an $833,153 expense. This is matching funds with federal dollars for behavioral health and in the behavioral needs in the Department of Health. Basically, I just got a few points on this one. The majority of those on Medicaid receiving behavioral health services are children, making this an investment in Wyoming's future. The behavioral health system has been overburdened by the ongoing mental health needs of the state to date. Behavioral health rates have been low for several years compared to our neighboring states. Wyoming already has trouble in attracting providers, and we're basically asking them to work more for less money. With this behavioral health redesign complete, this too is new information since the budget the original budget came out. Rebasing for these behavioral health rates now makes the most sense and the state has already done the legwork to make sure those dollars are used well. So a rebasing study has gone on, was actually part of it, and now that these results are in, this is how this group felt that we could best attack these behavioral needs problems, like I say, mostly in our younger adults across the state. This too, so make sure everyone knows, this too will be an ongoing expense because these needs are ongoing, and I urge your aye vote. Stand for questions.
Discussion on the amendment. Discussion. All right, question being called. Chief Clerk, call the roll.
Second reading amendment number 10, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Garou? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? Aye. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 10, 21 aye, 7 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 10 has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 11.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 11, Section 48, Department of Health, page 29, line 20 after.
Senator Landon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move second reading amendment number 11 to Senate File 1. Fellow senators, this goes into the Child Development Center's line item under the Department of Health. Just a little bit of history on this. For those of us who have been around for a while, about every 2 years we stand up on a budget amendment for this, so it's familiar to some, but for our newcomers, this particular funding formula was developed back in 2013. And at that time, we put into the statutes that we would set aside a certain amount of money for this. It's actually required by the federal government that we take care of these little guys. At that time, it was about $8,800 a student that we set in the formula, and we did okay, Mr. President. We tried to keep pace, and we did all right until about 2020. And since that time, we've really struggled. But you might remember last year, this Wyoming Senate passed Senate File 19, and we committed to that adjustment that was made in the funding for our child development centers. I can't recount all of the debate that took place in our Appropriations Committee, but it is my opinion, Mr. President, that we gave our word with Senate File 19, that we were going to take care of these child development centers. And for whatever reason, our Appropriations Committee extricated this appropriation out or did not include it. I think that goes to downstairs as well. I think our chief executive misinterpreted what I think we intended. But let me just say what I intend with this amendment, Mr. President. These little ones are the least among us. They are our most vulnerable. With your indulgence, I just want to read you something. I'm going to stop there and just read this. I am a mom of an employee and an employee of the Child Development Center. First and foremost, I'm the mom. A mom of a beautiful, spunky, blonde-haired, blue-eyed 4-year-old named Everly. We first got in contact with the Child Development Center when our daughter was 16 months old, Everly was a little over a year when she started saying words like daddy and mommy, and she would attempt to crawl, and mostly with arms and one leg to try to scoot, but we started noticing her speech was declining. She was no longer saying those words. At any rate, they reached out to the Child Development Center, to the screening services they offered, and the Child Development Center came over to the house, and this mom says, I knew at that moment that I had made the right call. On the day of the screening, the staff came to our house. I could not believe how good they were to our daughter. Everly worked with her therapist for 1.5 years. In this time, she learned how to crawl again. She was walking and saying multiple words. I truly believe that Everly would not be where she is today without the Child Development Center. Mr. President, these little guys and gals cannot make some of the benchmarks that we talk about in here. We're always talking about third grade benchmarks. We need to help these little ones. It's our duty. It's federal law that we do so. Remember, this is a different model, but I'll tell you this, we'll spend a lot more if we want to fold this into the public school formulas that we use. It would cost a lot more to do it differently. I'm just asking that you support the Child Development Centers. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Landon. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, on and for this amendment. Mr. President, the need in this area is gradually growing and will continue to grow as medical science progresses and more of the kids that are born with disabilities survive, and we wind up financially having to take care of them because you get a kid with a severe disability, no family, except the very most wealthy can afford it. So there is that financial pressure. Mr. President, the best time to deal with most of the disabilities is earlier in life. You get more bang for your buck, if you will, and treatment done then, because it's easier to fix the problems earlier. So if we get cheap on funding the child development centers that deal with it, we are going to pay the price in spades in extra special education expenses in our schools. And we've kept those expenses, Mr. President, fairly reasonable, given that we fully reimburse them, which you think would increase it. Probably does some, but they're still, we've managed to keep the K-12 expenses reasonable because we have funded our child development centers, and we need to continue to do that, Mr. President. Otherwise, we will pay a terrible price, both in disabilities that are not as well taken care of and in financial terms when the bill comes due from the K-12 system. So on and for this amendment.
Thank you. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I could give you the argument, and I agree with the argument that higher costs down the line are going to occur if we don't support this. But let me tell you why I support this amendment. You know, as chairman of Appropriations, I think we've been spending too much money on our supplemental budgets. And I have done everything in my power to bring you a thinner, far less expensive supplemental budget, and I think we've done that. Having said that, at the end of the day, when I get home, I still have to look in the mirror. These children with disabilities are truly, as the chairman said, the most vulnerable members of our society. This, I believe, needs to be done. I believe it does need to be in the supplemental budget. If I didn't think so, my name would not be on this amendment. I ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. President. A good senator from Bates Creek made the best business case you can make for this. It really is a situation where the money you spend now, and this is ongoing, money you spend now will pay dividends later and save a lot of costs down the road. But I also want to make sure we know what we're doing here today. There is the child ECA that's federally mandated that we go after. We're not in this amendment. We're not at all. As a matter of fact, we're still $11 million per year behind. So what this amendment does, is work on the provider services around that ECA, just to try to keep pace. But we're still far, far, far behind. So this is just kind of one component of what we should be doing in really a time of great need around our state. To be honest, in my community, this is not that as big a deal because frankly, through our philanthropy and other means, we can close that gap ourselves. The great number of communities, our small communities, the small counties around the state, rely on this money solely for these programs. And so that's why they're so critically important. This is for, we've talked a lot about this week, Mr. President, but this truly not only is for the neediest, but it's also for our rural communities, our small communities. This is a vote for them. On and forward. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I won't go on and on, but I just want to reiterate what a lot of my colleagues have said, that this is absolutely important. The earlier that these children get interventions, the less that they need, the less expensive it is, the better that they're going to do in life. We did pass a bill last year to help these, and these services are going to go away if we don't at least do something. So please vote aye on this.
Thank you. Anybody else before the sponsor? All right, Senator Landon, bring us home.
Mr. President, thank you. It's an honor to have the senators who spoke on this amendment stand up and join me in advocating for this. If you have not visited one of your child development centers, I encourage you to do it. You know, not only does it make the budget sense that our good senator from Bates Creek talked about, or the good senators to my right, not only is it budget sense, Mr. President, but this one is just simply doing the right thing. Let's take care of these child development centers. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, please call the roll on second reading amendment number 11.
Second reading amendment number 11, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? Aye. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? Aye. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? Aye. Ayed? No. Jones? Aye. Kolb? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? Aye. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? Aye. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 11, 24 aye, 4 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 11 has been adopted. Second reading amendment number 12.
Senate File 1, second reading amendment number 12. Section 48, Department of Health, page 29, line 21, under.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 12 to Senate File 1. Folks, this is another case where we had a call back and had a little bit of help on it. We we're brought a broad list of open positions, which is very common for the appropriations to cut. We take a look at these positions. They've been open for 24, 36, 48 months, and we do what good people looking at budgets do. We say, why are they there? And if they've been open for 48 months, why aren't we eliminating them? So we did. We actually voted, I was one of them, we voted to eliminate the positions. This was a big one. It was 14 positions in the Department of Health that had been open for over 40 months. And it was like, why did we do this? Well, immediately afterwards, we got a call back. People came back and they said, well, this is back to what I talked to you early, Superflex. So the Department of Health has been unable to fill skilled nursing positions for Title 25 and involuntary conversions down at the state hospital. They can't fill the positions at the standard rate that A&I gives them. So what they've been doing is using Superflex. They're using traveling nursing to come in, and they use this money to enhance their wages to be able to actually provide a service. And so what they've really done is they've been filled positions, but they've been traveling positions that they brought in, and they used the money to enhance and do it. No one wants to come work on Title 25 patients and some of these involuntary concerns at the rate we're at. So you'll be seeing in future budgets coming, we've asked them to take a look at fixing this, is to do it, but for now, they need this. We're gonna take care of the people that your local sheriff sends under Title 25 down, some of the other stuff. This is gonna create a burden if we don't do it. So what this does is puts us back to where we're actually gonna be able to function. Those positions are still gonna show next year as vacant or unfilled positions at 40+ months. But this is one that truly is an emergency and needs to be taken care of ongoing. I'll stand for question, ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, so was there any analysis done between what it costs right now to use these travel private sector nurses versus just hiring state employees? You know, what's the expenditures now for the same level of a service that we get to this? And just curious if that was analyzed. Just trying to figure out if this is a better way to go, or just what we're doing now with Superflex costs the state less money.
Senator Larson.
Mr. President, there was discussion on this, and then also some emails sent to us from the director. On an individual basis for nurses, they just can't get them hired for the tough job that they have, especially for Title 25 coverage. The quote was, currently they offer like about $18 per hour. A traveling nurse is more like 40 to 50. And then if you go to, what would it be? The contract nurses can be, what it is, $31 per hour, and their traveling is about 80 to 100 on those. So we need to figure out how we're gonna deal with this, but currently just can't pay enough to get them to come and work at the state hospital and the veterans home.
Thank you. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Are we doing anything to address the issue with evaluations of Title 25 in the state of Wyoming? I mean, this is about nurses, okay, but what are we doing about the bigger problem? And to this issue, I think this Superflex is a disaster. It allows people not to budget correctly, and now here we sit trying to have a complicated explanation about how they're taking money and then reallocating it because they have Superflex. I just don't know how we're addressing the real core issue here. I mean, this is an issue, but there's other issues as big or bigger than this that aren't being talked about. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cole. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, and there are some bigger issues. And Mr. President, some of this is a chronic problem. I can remember sitting as a lobbyist behind the Appropriations Committee in 1975, and they were talking about the shortage of nurses at the state hospital then, and it's been a chronic problem ever since. So some of this is just in the nature of that kind of work and somewhat in the nature of the location. But Mr. President, there's another chronic problem here, and that is that we need a drastic overhaul of our human resources operation in A&I, because we're seeing problems like this altogether too much in state government. The human resources department we've got is not functioning effectively, and this is evidence of it, and we need to do something about that, Mr. President. Having said that, Mr. President, this is essential. Title 25 is for the most severe, most dangerous for our mental health problems. They need the treatment, they need the trained professionals, and they're expensive. Mr. President, on and for the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Grew.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for, just a little history, real quick. Last year during the budget process, a very well-reasoned amendment came from the Senate, from my desk mate over here, that asked the chief executive to cut 24 positions across the enterprise. Let the chief executive do his job. That was our request. During the budget this year in the supplemental, some friends of ours down the hall decided that they wanted to call out the positions themselves. And that's what this amendment tries to put back, because frankly, it's a little bit more nuanced than just looking down a list of vacant employees and saying the ones that have been vacant for 100 or 50 months or more, get rid of them. But there are reasons. This is the reason why these vacant positions were there, so they can pool that money. There is no other way to do it. The problem, and I understand my friend from the southwest part of the state and saying, yeah, we should just put it in there exactly what we need and do it that way. And he's right. But there's an issue. And the issue is then, if we chart that at a per dollar an hour rate, as that's the rate, then all the way across the enterprise, we'll have to match it, because we have issues when we start doing that. So we have to kind of try to do workarounds to take care of these problems. I hope the day comes soon when we can just pay a regular rate and have regular folks in these jobs permanently. Right now, that's not the case. That's why the traveling nurses. Frankly, the better way was the way we did it originally, was ask the chief executive, who knows and has the department heads who know a little bit more about it, do this. But so we're just trying to fix something here that we think you and our friends down the hall now knows was a little bit of folly. So that's on and for. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Brennan.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just for a little bit of, I guess, clarification on some of the questions that have been, is there a bigger issue in maybe behavioral health that we need to address? Probably. I can assure you that anybody that is working with these patients in a setting wishes we had better answers. We oftentimes have patients in the facility where I work who will stay for a number of days trying to get patients to the state hospital, but we can't because there's not beds. And I don't know if it's because there's not beds or if because there's not enough staff to take care of those beds. That can sometimes be an issue with transferring patients to other facilities, is that maybe they have a bed that's vacant, but they don't have adequate staff. The other issue has kind of been addressed, and it's a little bit complex, but the way that nursing is right now and with the shortages, you can't say, okay, I heard $18 an hour thrown out there. I don't know exactly what the pay is, but I can tell you that when you need to bring a traveling nurse in, that any facility will do so with heartburn, because they're paying 2 and 3 and 4 times what they would just pay for a regular salaried employee to be there. But if you can't fill those positions, you have to look at getting a traveling nurse in, and it's just going to cost more. And we have to have flexibility, because I can assure you, if we don't give the department the flexibility to do this, we aren't going to have that hospital, because you're not going to get it staffed with nurses. That's just, there is a shortage, there's a demand, and people just, they go where the money is. So we have to be able to do that in order to staff this hospital.
Thank you. Anybody else before the sponsor? All right, back to you, Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think most of it's kind of been addressed. I'm not going to go totally. It's obvious that we've got to take a look at it. One of the things, the first question that got asked was the analysis. That was my first question, is why in the world are we paying traveling nurses? And it was the wage disparity that got brought up to you. We're going to have to start looking at regional cost adjustments, folks, for different areas. When you get a specialized deal, when we went to A&I and said, set us a standard wage scale, skilled nursing, you think of skilled nursing until you're taking care of Title 25. What would you rather do? Take care of the middle unit at your local hospital or take care of Title 25? Obviously, you're not going to fill those positions at the same rate as you are with the other ones. And we've got to come up with that as a system. I love the way the body's looking, is how do we look at cutting this and making it work right long term? But for today, we're dealing with an emergency appropriation. We did a cut that was going to cause something that we just heard on the floor that's happening. You might have a Title 25 that your local law enforcement, your local hospital is going to have to pay for, because we cut the positions, and actually we've got beds at the state hospital, but we can't take patients because we don't have nursing there. We get rid of this, it's probably just a vacant position, and it's pretty tough to figure out what we're going to do. So I encourage you to vote yes on it. I also encourage you all to think about it, and let's start finding long-term solutions to some of these problems that we're all identifying on the floor. We can have a lot bigger discussion away from today, but for ongoing, let's take care of the problem we got in the state. Vote yes, please.
Thank you. Chief Clerk will call the roll on second reading amendment number 12.
Second reading amendment number 12, roll call. Anderson? Aye. Barlow excused. Boner? No. Brennan? Aye. Case? Aye. Cooper? Aye. Crago? Aye. Crum? Aye. Dockstetter? No. Driscoll? Aye. French excused. Guru? Aye. Hicks? No. Hutchings? No. Ide? No. Jones? No. Cole? No. Landon? Aye. Larson? Aye. McEwen? No. Nethercott excused. Olson? Aye. Pappas? Aye. Pearson? No. Rothfuss? Aye. Salazar? Aye. Schuler? Aye. Scott? Aye. Smith? Aye. Steinmetz? No. President Beitman?
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote closed. Second reading amendment number 12, 18 aye, 10 no, 3 excused.
Second reading amendment number 12 has been adopted. Mr. Minority Floor Leader, do you have a motion for us perhaps?
I do, Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. President, I move that we stand recessed until 2 p.m.
All right, you've heard the motion. Any announcements? Any announcements? Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Number 3 Revenue Committee will meet in room W6 to discuss Senate File 194, e-cigarettes and vapor material manufacturer licenses, Senate File 93, tribal trust land sales and use tax exemption, and Senate File 94, Wind River Reservation remote sales and use tax. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Anderson.
Mr. President, Minerals Business and Economic Development will meet today upon noon recess about 12:40 in Capitol Extension Room W4 to hear Senate File 134, Industrial Siting Wildlife Mitigation, which is continued from 2-3. Senate File 154, Industrial Wind and Solar Projects Hearing Deadline, and Senate File 179, Sage Grouse Compensatory Mitigation Amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Olson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 1, Judiciary, will meet at 12:15 in W2 to consider 4 Senate files. Senate File 157, Department of Family Services. No, I got the wrong notice. I'll come back.
Okay, we'll hold on that one. We'll go to Senator Landon next.
Thank you. Mr. President, your Corporations Committee 7 will be meeting upon adjournment today in an additional meeting to continue discussion on Senate File 184, Prohibition on Electronic Voting Equipment 2, Senate File 190 after that, the Election Transparency Bill, and then Senate File 193, Electric Utility Service Agreements, Large Loads, and that'll be in W4 upon adjournment. Thank you.
Upon adjournment, thank you. Back to you, Chairman Olson.
Yes, I'm back, Mr. President. We're gonna consider 3 Senate files, that's what I thought. Senate File 180, Supplemental Budget Limitations, Senate Joint Resolution 8, Political Expenditures, and Senate Joint Resolution 9, Individual Right to Privacy Constitutional Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Senate Appropriations Committee will meet upon noon recess tomorrow, Thursday, in room 113. We'll be dealing with Senate File 189, Uniform Commercial Code Investment Securities, Senate File 142, Veterans Home of Wyoming Capital Construction, Senate File 187, Public Employee Retirement Plan Contributions, Senate File 197, Wyoming Generational Investment Account 2, and Senate File 123, School Finance Competitive Grants for Crossing Guards. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, in the absence of the chairman, the committee number 10, Labor, will meet downstairs at W110 at 12:35. Senate File 175, Unemployment Insurance Coverage Period Reporting, and Senate File 125, Defining Healthcare and Protecting the People's Welfare.
Thank you. Senator Olson.
Mr. Chairman, would now be a good time to re-refer a bill?
No, not until after lunch.
After lunch? Okay.
Senator Guru.
Mr. President, thank you. Just a personal privilege.
You bet.
Wanted to remind everyone, we've got a great lunch next door, and I know a lot of folks have committee meetings, but if you don't, and you got a little extra time, the Wyoming Association of Municipalities is hosting a lunch downstairs in the connector, and if you do have committee meetings, you'll be able to pick up a lunch there and head off to your meeting as well. So see your folks, see your local elected leaders downstairs. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gru, could you amend your motion to maybe 2:30? I know our committees have a lot going on at lunch.
Mr. President, yes, could I amend that to move that we adjourn, stand recessed until 2:30? 2:30.
Thank you. Senator Driscoll?
Mr. President, privilege.
Privilege granted.
Quick reminder, folks, when we finish the second after lunch, the amendments are due immediately upon passing the second. So if you have amendments you want to bring, they're third reading amendments, get them put together over lunch if you can. You don't have to have them totally complete, but you do have to have staff told what the subject matter is and a rough idea where you're at, or you're going to be out. When we pass the second, it's closed. So fair warning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that change, the Revenue Committee will meet at 12:35.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order here? All right. You heard the minority leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Amendment, or the motion has been adopted. The Senate will stand recessed till 2:30.